Chapter 5. We must become like a tree planted by streams of water. Quote, watch your thoughts for they become your words. Watch your words for they become your actions. Watch your actions for they become your habits. Watch your habits for they create your character. And watch your character for it becomes your destiny. What we think, we become. End quote. By Margaret Thatcher. Quote, we become what we think about most of the time. End quote. Earl Nightingale. The field of epigenetics is the study of changes in organisms caused by modification of gene expression rather than alteration of the genetic code itself. End quote. When we consider epigenetics, we find that outside influences and internal influences from our thoughts, words, actions, and habits, which create our character, are constantly changing our human genome. Our entire library of genes gets rewritten by our inputs and outputs as well as by that of others. Our environment has a powerful influence on our entire makeup. It really does strongly influence the way we think, speak, act, or behave, and there is no way around it. Since such is the case, it must be our mission, like a general who commands his troops onto battle, to command and influence powerfully all forms of inputs and outputs from our immediate reality. We must learn to reshape our matrix reality as we see fit. We must do our best to take control and wage war against anything that may influence our thoughts, words, and actions negatively. We must guard our habits with our lives and with every breath we take and form our character in order to attain our best conceivable outcome. In essence, we must become, quote, like a tree planted by streams of water, end quote, taken from Psalms 1 verse 3. What does that really mean? A tree that is purposely planted by a source of fresh, clean water is bound deeply to take root and become a fruitful and abundant tree. It becomes tall and strong. Certain animals will find lodging under the foliage of such trees. They become a stronghold for others. On the other side of the coin, if that river were to become contaminated and polluted, the outcome of that tree will be the exact opposite, and it would eventually die. Quote, be on the watch of the false teachers who come to you in sheep's covering, but inside they are ravenous wolves. By their fruits you will recognize them. Never do people gather grapes from thorns or figs from thistles, do they? Likewise, every good tree produces fine fruit, but every rotten tree produces worthless fruit. A good tree cannot bear worthless fruit, nor can a rotten tree produce fine fruit. Every tree not producing fine fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Really, then, by their fruits you will recognize those men. End quote. Taken from Matthew chapter 7, verses 15 through 20. It is noteworthy to examine that Jesus gave some of the most powerful illustrations to prove complex points. He did speak to a general population who did not even know how to write or read and are generally uneducated. He also spoke to crowds with children who, regardless of background, will be able to easily grasp such illustrations. These visual aids embedded powerful lessons in people's minds, and the points were made effectively. For this reason, instead of creating new illustrations here, we shall refer to the biblical reference for simplicity. This drives us back to the lessons from Moses' cognitive example, that we must learn and take information from only those who have been known to come from well-watered places, clean waters, and trees whose fruitage of success is evident. Their energetic imprint will easily influence us, and the outcomes may either be disastrous or incredibly beneficial. Let's consider the importance of our taking this counsel with utmost care. Quote, therefore, everyone who hears these sayings of mine and does them will be like a discreet man who built his house on the rock. And the rain poured down, and floods came, and the winds blew and lashed against that house. But it did not cave in, for it had been founded on the rock. Furthermore, everyone hearing these sayings of mine and not doing them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. And floods came, and the winds blew and struck against that house, and it caved in, and its collapse was great. End quote. Taken from Matthew chapter 7, verse 24 through 27. Here, the point is also made clear that if we decide to not take action and learn these principles of success, then it would be as foolish as building a house on the sand. We need to strongly consider and discern that it truly is our moral obligation to understand the best possible way to get from point A to point B, whatever it is that we wish to experience. To emphasize this extremely important point, it is encouraged to the reader to reread at this time chapter 1 and how it relates to success. We may say, but I already read it. Why should I read it again? Quote, if anyone thinks he knows something, he does not yet know it as he should know it. End quote. Taken from 1 Corinthians chapter 8, verse 2. We have all been there before. We love to watch a certain movie or listen to a certain song repeatedly. Many times we find scenes or ideas that we seem to have previously missed. It is almost like a brand new movie or song. It happens when we read the same books periodically. It is the same when we repeatedly do things. We do them better, and we become more attuned to the actions. Athletes are known to practice basic moves to master and remaster their selected sport. Swimmers will swim the same laps in the same pool to refine their movements in order to swim faster and more elegantly. Skateboarders will try and retry the same flips and maneuvers so that when the time comes for the competitions, they can show their skill and perform better. Basketball players will practice free throw shots repeatedly to increase their chances of winning when time comes for the real games and improve their scoring. The point is clear. Repetition is the quintessence of all success and learning. If any one person desires to excel in their chosen field or career, repetition is what will determine their success. Neglecting this will create negative thoughts, which will lead us to developing a negative character, for harboring the attitude that we know it all is also the quintessence of failure. This will absolutely make us fail at our personal endeavors, or maybe we will just achieve minimal positive results. It has been examined scientifically what happens when we develop and establish habits of study and training. Our brains will drastically change through a process called neuroplasticity. It is related to the field of epigenetics, which we will not get in here into great detail. It is closely related to the term brain plasticity. Wikipedia explains that, quote, it is an umbrella term that encompasses both synaptic plasticity and non-synaptic plasticity. It refers to changes in neural pathways and synapses due to changes in behavior, environment, neural processes, thinking, and emotions, as well as changes resulting from bodily injury. The basic teaching in the field of epigenetics is that every time you have a thought, say words, take action, and develop habits, you will ingrain those thoughts into your brain in the form of neural pathways. These neural pathways will cause you to repeat such behavior, and thus continue to perpetuate the nature and vibrational imprint of those neural pathways. This could be detrimental or beneficial based on the essence of our personal habits. These neural pathways broadcast electrical signals that are picked up by our hypothalamus. This is a part of our brain about the size of an almond. It takes those electrical signals and turns them into its own chemical based on the nature of the electric transmission from those specific neural pathways. Like a chemical power plant, it releases those electrical pulses as neural hormones based on the blueprint of that original electrical signal into the bloodstream and feeds all cells accordingly. This process then rewrites the genetic code with the blueprint of the chemical feedback from the hypothalamus. For this feedback is the essence of the electrical signals originally sent by those precise neural pathways. The cells replicate and produce openings called receptors, which become more susceptible to the same chemical and thus feed much easier. This is why people who generally tend to be more negative will become more and more negative and thus always feel bad. The opposite is true and enforced. Positive people will generate more powerful positive thoughts, secreting positive chemicals, and thus make the body feel good. The person essentially does also feel much better. This is absolutely emphasized when we observe how the placebo and the nocebo effect have an immediate effect on the biology of the person. Quote, all the days of the afflicted one are bad, but the one with a cheerful heart has a continual feast. End quote. Taken from Proverbs chapter 15, verse 15. It does not take a scientist to reason that a good attitude and positive thinking is beneficial. But then again, maybe it does. We can establish clearly in our mind information and research from thousands of papers that talk about this. Our efforts in doing so will show us clearly the urgency that we have to take with our thoughts. We must take full responsibility for all our mental inputs and outputs. Please, let's strongly consider rereading this book, as well as other references that will be provided to help us clearly establish and imprint in our mind these convictions. The basics of input and output. To take control and become like that tree planted by streams of water, we must realize and become consciously aware of what we are taking in. We must consider being in a deep sense of alertness as we go through our day. It is broken down into these areas. First, what we see, our eyes. Second, what we hear, our ears. Third, what we think, our brains. Fourth, what we say and eat, our words and food. Fifth, our environment and immediate contact with other energetic beings, humans, and their personal reality. What we take in collectively through all forms of input and output will absolutely influence our thoughts, words, actions, and collective behavior. Science proves it. When we watch, say, an R-rated movie that is full of negative behavior, gory images of violence and foul language, it will absolutely create neural pathways that will serve to the detriment of our overall success. That goes for music, TV shows, books, magazines, video games, computer images, etc. We can do whatever we want and decide to do whatsoever we desire. And as such, we must be ready to accept responsibility for what will happen in our lives. It is extremely important that we discern what the immediate reality of our friends and family is in order to determine what it is that they are getting in the form of feedback. First, we must realize the truth before we establish judgment on the physical manifestation of people's realities. The truth is, we must know that it is a mirror of their collective vibration, but also a reflection of our own matrix reality. Thus, we realize that we see our collective vibration also influencing others' immediate experience, which then mirrors what we are back to us. That is why they are our friends and family. We are all on the same field of vibrational creation, and thus we create together. As such, we must make every effort to improve ourselves and establish new neural pathways that will raise us up and unplug us from that field of negative output if it reflects what we do not desire. Limited contact is encouraged with those who may enforce our negative reality. This is not to encourage or confuse us into thinking that we should look down on those who may have less than desirable circumstances. This is not suggested at all, since we must always be aware and remember that our every experience, including the experience of those around us and their collective reality, is in fact a mere reflection of our collective thoughts and vibrational frequency. We are talking about neural pathways and our DNA vibration, which includes what we have inherited through our bloodline. We can illustrate it this way. Imagine that we have a field of produce, a farm where we have planted all sorts of seeds that we inherit from our parents and from the rest of our bloodline. Those seeds have germinated, taken root, and flourished and have produced fruit according to each kind and season. They produce exactly what they are supposed to produce. Thus we realize that we must always reap what we have sown. We eat and share the fruitage of our collective harvest. At this point, we must ask, do we like what we are taking in? Do we like what we have produced? If we do, then we can keep on planting those seeds and thus reinforce the cycle. But if we do not like what we are taking in, then we must consider stopping sowing seeds of such nature. As we examine our present reality, do we see and eat what we want? Do we experience happiness, joy, and bliss? Or are we constantly experiencing depression, anger, and misery? Whatever it is, we must be honest with ourselves. People tend to point fingers to external influences as the cause of their misery, but rarely take credit for their positive accomplishments. If our lives have been defined by mostly the negative aspect, do we fail to realize that it was us who planted those seeds of misery? Do we fail to take full responsibility and stop blaming others for what is happening in our personal lives? We are the creators of our own environments, and according to scientific data, it is an exact match to our thoughts and brain wiring. The good news is that we can change it and expand. Many people at this point find it hard to realize that they will be the cause of the negative people, circumstances, and events that continue to hem them in. Whether things took place in the past or they are presently being experienced, it really is a hard pill to swallow to know it is our fault. I know I did, but we must note that this is a powerful conviction that truly empowers us as individuals and as a society. We must begin to refine our thoughts and actions, and as such, we begin to turn the wheels toward the other side of the spectrum. Maybe the momentum has been at full speed toward the negative side. It will take tremendous amount of energy to bring it back and then make the shift toward the opposite direction, the positive side. It may be like a big hill which we climb while carrying heavy burdens, but then we easily drop them once we reach the peak. Everything is downhill then. If a person is 200 pounds overweight, then such person is in a dire need of drastic and rapid changes in their life. If they wish to consider being successful in getting to the point where they are at a healthy weight, such person must take decisive positive action. A person that is only 20 pounds overweight and wants to achieve the physique of a top athlete will certainly get there faster than the 200-pound person once both decide to get to such point. The person with the extra 20 pounds will not have to go through such extreme changes or take such drastic actions. Both will obviously have the need to work hard to reach their destination. The reality is that they are at much different starting points. But is there a system that we can plug into to rapidly change our collective vibration to that of a positive one? As we observe our present circumstances and matrix reality of particles defined by time and space, maybe we realize figuratively that we are, in essence, 200 pounds overweight and in need of dire help to change. the momentum might be against us. It is unfortunately what our personal observation of the world seen and what it is currently showing us, for we must realize that it is only a reflection of our own vibrational blueprint. Like the sun that collectively puts out frequencies based on its atomic structure, then, in the same manner, the vibration of our own personal atomic structure is collectively putting out one frequency. We must change it because we realize that collective feedback we are getting is predominantly negative. This is true when we examine the final outcome of every human being. Why do we die? Because we create such an outcome for ourselves. This is the law of the universe. Otherwise, our nature would be infinite. And with infinity as a resource, we would always be living in a state of ecstasy and bliss. It is our moral obligation to take 100% responsibility for every outcome in our lives. We must start spinning in the opposite direction. How? There is a powerful system that can and will help us get there without exception. Powerful evidence will continue to be provided through the book to show of its powerful credibility. But like always, the choice is up to us to plug in. This system will help us to continue modifying our thoughts to change the speed of the mass of inexorable agents that are preventing our state from being changed suddenly. This system has been used throughout millennia by the most powerful world powers that have been known to exist. Like a powerful stream of water, this must be the result for us. Quote, "He will be like a tree planted by streams of water, a tree that produces fruit in its season, the foliage of which does not wither, and everything he does will succeed." End quote. Taken from Psalms 1 verse 3. Consider the benefits and the ultimate outcome of such a system. For objectivity, it will not be quoted verbatim, but paraphrased to create posterity, since in reality these quotes are all based on laws of physics. Derived from Deuteronomy chapter 28. And if you without fail listen by being careful to act in harmony with these laws of physics that you are learning about today, then the universe will put you high above all other peoples of the earth. All these benefits will come upon you and overshadow or overtake you because you keep listening and learning about the laws of the universe in relation to you and applying them positively. Number 1, privileged and fortunate will you be in your home, and privileged and fortunate will you be in your discipline or choice of career or business. Number 2, privileged, fortunate, and lucky will be your children, and your profits, and the profits of your children's choice of career or business. Number 3, privileged and fortunate will you be when you're working on your choice of endeavor. Number 4, privileged and fortunate will you be wherever you go and whatever you do. Number 5, the universe will cause problems and calamities that come up to be instantly resolved by you and before you. They will come from one place but be resolved instantly many different ways. Number 6, the universe will make a physical law of the universe, like the law of gravity, an agreement between you and the universe to make abundant and fortunate your bank accounts, your investment accounts, your personal wealth, and every commitment and project or decision that you set out to do will be fortunate and privileged or blessed. Number 7, the universe will establish you as a revered people because you continue to apply and study the laws of the physical universe and live positively by them. And all the people surrounding you will know that the universe has appointed you as a well-known and respected person. And people will respect and honor you by giving you proper recognition. Number 8, the universe will make you overflow with much prosperity and abundance through your choice of discipline, career, or business. Number 9, the universe will open up to you its banks of infinite energy, prosperity, and make you fortunate and privileged in everything that you do. It will be so much that you will be able to establish your own banking system based on your own wealth, and others will borrow from you. The universe will make you the leader and not the follower, always coming out on top and never on the bottom, as long as you keep applying the physical laws of the universe in a positive manner. It must be emphasized that this has been paraphrased for posterity and objectivity. The benefits described were given in a time and space where people's lives were much more different from our time. The intention of these benefits, as examined throughout the book of Deuteronomy, come from its laws therein as they were given to an ancient people for their own benefit. When examined carefully, it will be noticed that they are truly based on laws of physics, as described in the light of quantum physics and other principles. By law, these commandments will bring tremendous benefits to those who live by them in a positive way. If the reader wishes to learn more about this, please do so by reading Deuteronomy chapter 28 verses 1 through 14. Note that it is not suggested that the universe is the same as Jehovah or God by definition, but it is the intent of the author to zero in on a pre-established system that has been unequivocally integrated into the fabric of the universe for the benefit of all those living in that system. The religious dogmatic approach of who is God will not be approached or discussed in this book. Just consider it as a different frame of mind based on empirical evidence and the light of science and proven philosophies. With this in mind, let's consider and continue to discuss this significant singular system that will ultimately bring these incredible benefits. We are encouraged strongly that we plug in immediately and consistently for our own personal gain and those of others who may be important to us. Books, audios, meetings, relationships, and recognition. A system that consists of reading books, listening to audiobooks, attending group meetings with like-minded people, building relationships with those who also understand these principles, and the giving and receiving recognition perpetuates and pervades in successful companies and businesses throughout the world. It is also prevalent in the lives of incredibly successful individuals. This system has been established and is used today by some of the most profitable and powerful foundations, whether in relationships, business, government, social, or religion. We are strongly urged to investigate on our own the veracity of this system and how it has affected ultra-successful people throughout history. Group meetings and relationship. Power of the mastermind. This systematic approach to education is based on knowing that people are a business' most valued and best asset. Therefore, the profitability of our minds is truly our most precious asset. We all have read or heard the saying, quote, "If you think education is expensive, try ignorance," end quote. So let's consider writing this enterprise perpetually persevere toward a true education. In essence, you will find that it is the most powerful educational tool to transform people's minds. Having said that, let's also consider the power of collective harmony and group dynamics integrated into this system of personal education. There are countless organizations and businesses that acquire massive amounts of incomes for themselves and for the people who collectively work together for those companies. Without people and their collective power, little can be accomplished in comparison. Quote, "Look, they are one people with one language, and this is what they have started to do. Now, there's nothing that they may have in mind that will be impossible for them." End quote. Taken from Genesis chapter 11, verse 6. Here, the biblical reference describes the unfathomable power of group dynamics and how people collectively working to create one goal has tremendous benefits. So much so that it is considered impossible to fail. We must win once engaged. There are tremendous benefits and power when people come together and form what Napoleon Hill learned from Andrew Carnegie, the power of a mastermind. Napoleon Hill expressed that it only took Andrew Carnegie a total of 20 people to create his entire wealth. May we emphasize that it has been estimated that he had almost 300 billion in assets. Some have estimated more. Consider that he accomplished most of it during a time where there was no internet, TV, cell phones, and all the devices that make our lives better. Consider the amount of money that such a vast accomplishment entails. If we were to own such wealth in cash, and if we decided to spend $100,000 every day, it would take us about 8,219 years to spend it all. The collective decision of a group of people guided by one common goal will perpetuate the matrix or ether and help establish that reality much more quickly than one or just a few people getting together. Quote, and someone may overpower one alone, but two together can take a stand against him, and a threefold cord cannot quickly be torn apart. End quote. Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verse 12. Paul had to remind the first century Christians to consider one another so as to incite to love and fine works, not forsaking our meeting together as some have the custom, but encouraging one another. Taken from Hebrews chapter 10, verses 24 through 25. We realize how much progress we make when we gather with like-minded people to do things that we have in common and thus enhancing our every experience. People will flock to arenas to watch their favorite sports, singers, movies, events, or conferences. People with common interests will sit with one another to discuss for hours, days, and weeks continually and get each other's viewpoints and frames of mind. I personally love to listen, read, and learn about concepts based on physics, philosophy, and spirituality. I have been on a personal quest since childhood to put together a harmonious integration by finding common denominators within and in connection of these subjects. I sat with and learned from people with the same ideas, have spent exorbitant amounts of money, time, and energy studying and integrating this information. To what end? That of finding practical knowledge and wisdom, whose paramount value is not only for myself, but also for others. We also develop easier, more loving, and closer bonds with those who support us in a common interest, like force of particles becoming stronger because they are in constant communication with one another. On the other side of the coin, we must remember, though, that as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens his friend. So can this harmony of thought cause tremendous damage. We must be aware of those who may not be like-minded, as well as those who oppose this knowledge. They could be like rust on metal, just slowly wearing away the profitable efforts of those who desire to come together in support of each other. We're not referring to the common disagreements of different points of view and healthy debating. This exchange of information within a healthy intention from both parties will ultimately benefit both. We previously discussed the importance of validating and integrating our common knowledge and beliefs. It will support and enforce what we know more strongly, or it will make us revalidate what we know in the light of new evidence, so we may adjust. We refer to parasites that feed off the value and production of others. They will eat away our goals, dreams, and hopes to validate their own existence, always envious of what others have, producing and creating illusions of dishonesty and dishonest gain. Just like righteous Job of the biblical reference, most of his so-called friends falsely concluded because of his misery and sickness, he was being punished for serious wrongdoing. Quote, Job came neither eating nor drinking, but people say he has a demon. The Son of Man did come eating and drinking, but people say, look, a man who is glutton and is given to drinking wine, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. All the same, wisdom is proved righteous by its works. End quote. Taken from Matthew chapter 11, verses 18 through 19. Just like the Pharisees created lies and attributed Jesus' work to the ruler of the demons, so will people demonize our efforts to do what is right in our pursuit of our dreams and goals. In the same manner, this information has been repressed and hidden from those who would need it most. Kevin Trudeau emphasized that it is because they do not want competition. In the same way, a parasite will bring on more parasites, so does those who decide to be judgmental of our endeavors and dreams as if we had nothing but bad motives. The system of personal education will propel us to incredible heights of success, and it is being suppressed by the current worldly systematic approach to education. Before we discuss the other facets of this system, we will and must build a foundation or it won't work. There are certain principles that must be established firmly into our mind in order for us to reach certain true success. What is being denoted here is despite that any cognition and understanding that the reader may have come to until this point, there's 95% chance that it won't work in your current set point of collective vibrational output unless something takes place first. Jesus illustrated like this, quote, "Nobody sews a patch of unshrunk cloth on an old outer garment. If he does, the new piece pulls away from the old, and the tear becomes worse. Also, no one puts new wine into old wineskins. If he does, the wine will burst the skins, and the wine is lost as well as the skins. The new wine is put into new wineskins." End quote. Taken from Mark chapter 2, verses 21 through 22. It is what Tesla described about the nature of mass, in this case, pre-established neural pathways. Quote, "The same inexorable agents which prevent a mass from changing suddenly its velocity will likewise resist the force of the new knowledge until time gradually modifies human thought." End quote. We cannot build a brand new structure on top of an existing structure. The old property must be demolished, and then a new structure may be built. In essence, we must burn or demolish that old property. We must replace completely our thinking patterns like emergency surgery, thus cutting away a dead, cancerous organ. How? Sharpening your axe. Do we know or just know about? Quote, "If an iron tool is dull and one does not sharpen its edge, he will need to exert much effort, but wisdom helps to achieve success." End quote. Taken from Ecclesiastes chapter 10, verse 10. Quote, "My son, if you accept my sayings and treasure up my commandments, by making your ear attentive to wisdom and inclining your heart to discernment, moreover, if you call out for understanding and raise your voice for discernment, if you keep seeking for it as for silver and you keep searching for it as hidden treasures, you will find the knowledge of God." End quote. Taken from Proverbs chapter 2, verses 1 through 5. It is known fundamentally that we must be teachable when it comes to learning and understanding what it takes to succeed. But in reality, very few people truly understand how far this concept can go. We can illustrate this idea by acknowledging the fact that when scientists study the cosmos, the further they go and look into outer space or the universe, the more they emphasize and realize how much we don't know. Also, we are beginning to understand that the further we look into the microcosmos and the fabric of the universe, we realize how much we just do not know. It is a strange paradox, but we see that knowledge just begets more knowledge. We learn one link, and it seems that three other concepts are shown to us based on that first connection. Then we look at those three interconnections and we realize that 9 more questions come up. Knowledge continues to exponentially expand, seemingly to infinity. And just like learning units of knowledge, we see that within those units, there are an infinite amount of smaller parts within one piece of information. For example, when we take the number 1, there is also 0.01, 0.001, 0.0001, 0.00001, and so forth within that unit. In essence, we continue to learn infinitely in all directions. To illustrate further, consider watching the episode of Stan Lee's Superhumans featuring Shi Yun-ming and his 1-inch punch. Shi Yun-ming is a Shaolin monk who has a school for Shaolin martial arts. Raised in the original Shaolin temple, he was trained from childhood. He defected from China and is now teaching somewhere in New York City. In this episode, his strength was tested based on Bruce Lee's famous 1-inch punch. It was claimed that Shi's power has reached a much higher level than that of Bruce Lee's. A test group set up a crash dummy and hooked it up to computers to measure the force of impact, just like it is done in crash tests for vehicle safety. The conclusion was mind-blowing. The little Chinese man at 5 feet 3 inches could generate more force against the dummy with his 1-inch punch than a 30-mile-per-hour collision. This punch would certainly kill a person in a single blow. It is understood that there is such a thing as a single punch, but according to the results, it is discernible that he had to harness and receive some very specific and repetitive training to be able to achieve such force in a punch that was an inch away. Interestingly, he has been quoted as saying, quote, "I am not afraid of the 10,000 strikes you have practiced once. I am deadly afraid of the one strike you have practiced 10,000 times." End quote. Taken from Your Wish Is Your Command by Kevin Trudeau. The reasoning is logical and powerful in itself. It is the ability to integrate neural pathways and learning a few simple convictions and mastering them to a level of efficiency that supersedes a simple overview and quick scan of learning or doing something just once. Kevin Trudeau and Informational King explained this extensively in an audio series entitled Your Wish Is Your Command. In a rare coincidence, he explains that he himself took Xi Jinping into his house as a guest and was personally trained by the monk himself. This is where he learned the quote about practicing a single move 10,000 times. Kevin Trudeau explains that it is the basics that we must master by going over them repeatedly, that each time we listen to an audio material, read a book, or listen to a lecture, since we are a different person each time we do those things, we will take in the information much differently. We will take in new discoveries, cognition, and realizations that will help us integrate even further the knowledge that we are building. Like spiritual leader Paul emphasized, quote, "If anyone thinks he knows something, he does not yet know it as he should know it." End quote. Taken from 1 Corinthians chapter 8, verse 2. The Kingdom Interlinear Translation of Greek Scripture states the same verse this way, quote, "If anyone is thinking to have known anything, not as yet he knew accordingly as it is binding to know." End quote. It is true we must continue to bind our neural pathways based on this knowledge so that we come to the point of not just knowing about, but truly knowing, allowing us to live these principles and produce discernible evidence or create physical manifestations in the real physical world that prove that we know. It is just like this monk whose punch was measured to be stronger than a 30-mile-per-hour car crash. He certainly knows how to throw a punch. Solomon truly had the right idea. We must pursue mastering knowledge the same way we would pursue a hidden treasure. We readily realize that if we found a treasure map, like Indiana Jones, we would not spare any effort on finding such treasure. Jesus, in connection to the kingdom, gave a very appropriate illustration, saying, quote, "The kingdom of the heavens is like a traveling merchant seeking fine pearls. Upon finding one pearl of high value, he went away and promptly sold all the things he had and bought it." End quote. Taken from Matthew 13, verse 45. We realize of the intricacies and high value of this training and knowledge based on real-life principles, supported and grounded in the light of quantum physics and empirical evidence. Are we humble enough to realize that we do not know anything and that we need help? Are we too proud to receive counsel emphasized by powerful evidence? Since we do not deny the existence of technology because we rarely see it, then how come it is so easy to envy and criticize those who have better success than we do? Isn't their technology as evident and tangible as it is with the cell phone or computer? Since we do not understand how these things work, then why should we take upon ourselves to destroy people's reputations just because we don't understand their success? Would it not be much better to learn and apply the common denominators of success that they themselves have learned to achieve what we want? This is the exact reason the biblical reference explains why Jesus was executed unjustly. He had technologies at his beck and call and performed observable miraculous actions, and for that, the rulers of that world hated him, persecuted him, made fun of him, ultimately murdered him. It is because they thought they knew it all and had the ultimate call on the ultimate truth and philosophy and could not accept the reality of their ignorance. It was too shameful that they knew nothing, and their attitude showed that it was true. This kind of hateful persecution has happened consistently throughout history to those who pioneer movements of knowledge that we are now seeing having a positive impact on our everyday life. It is as Albert Einstein said, great spirits have always encountered violent opposition from mediocre minds. End quote. The Teachability Index, quoting Kevin Trudeau. This conviction will have profound effect in our lives once we realize how we can turn it into a powerful one-inch punch. If you have not done so already, I would encourage you to get your own copy of this series by this renowned author. In this series of audio, he talks about how he himself defected from a private group of elite people called the Brotherhood. In this private, exclusive club, he was mentored and taught all of these principles of success. This book you are now reading was strongly influenced by his teachings. Thus, to review these common denominators of success, they must be compared with the foundational principles of empirical evidence in the fields of quantum theory, but mainly with the Bible. In my opinion, other than the biblical reference, this next concept has not been better explained and simplified more efficiently as Kevin Trudeau does in the audio series, Your Wish is Your Command. It truly does give me personal validation of the veracity and validity of the Bible and its most basic teachings for personal success. Mr. Trudeau has demonstrated plainly in his life how efficient and powerful these principles are. They are timeless and used by all the most successful people in the world. The power of being teachable. First, we are taught that we must be teachable and coachable. The qualification to enter into these secret societies and learn all the levels of apprenticeship is whether you are teachable and coachable. Not how much we know, how smart we are, but do we know how dumb we are and how much we don't know. End quote. Kevin Trudeau. In Your Wish is Your Command, Kevin Trudeau explains that you must have a high teachability index. It is based on two variables, willingness to learn and willingness to accept change. It is explained that our willingness to learn can be measured from a scale from 1 to 10. 1 being a low willingness to learn and 10 being a high willingness to learn. The same can be applied to the second concept and our willingness to accept change. If we consider that if we have a 10 in our willingness to learn, but we have a hard time applying them and accepting change, which will mean 0 willingness to accept change, we will have a 10 times 0 teachability index, or a 0 teachability index. But if we can get our variables to be 10 times 10, we will be the perfect student with a teachability index of 100. We can examine that the biblical reference has explained these thoughts in very simple illustrations. Mirroring the importance of having a high willingness to learn, we have discussed the sacrifices that the merchant did to obtain a pearl of high value. He sold everything he had just to acquire what he wanted. Are we willing to sacrifice our time, money, and resources in the same manner in order to learn these concepts? Are we willing to search as for hidden treasure or money? Our time and money truly are some of our most prized and valued possessions. Can we give things up to acquire such knowledge and understanding so that we may learn from those who have the capacity to teach us? Do we readily accept the evident demonstration of what they have and their success as physical manifestations of the reality of their personal knowledge? As Paul emphasized, do we realize that we have not come to know and integrate knowledge as we should, bindingly, irrevocably. Our willingness to accept change is determined also by the same things, but mainly by our decisions to observe and live by such teachings. Kevin Trudeau emphasized that we must be willing to give up things we love doing and thus freeing up time, energy, and money to acquire and learn these basic teachings of success. We are known to be creatures of habits. These habits that we have already established originate from our most prevalent thoughts. We have patterns of behavior where every day we will occupy our time in things that are either building us up or tearing us apart. If we want things in our life to change, we must change things in our life. We cannot do the same things over and over, week after week, month after month, year after year, and expect we'll achieve something different and better than what we currently have. People spend massive amounts of time, energy, and resources on entertainment and other things we may not be willing to give up easily. How much time do we spend watching TV? How much time do we spend on the internet looking up trivial things? How much time do we spend drinking or eating or clubbing? None of these things are wrong in themselves, but are they helping us get to where we desire to go? Are we willing to think, speak, act, form habits, and develop the character traits that we must have in order to replicate the success that we desire? As we examine our lives carefully, can we truly give the proper answer? And let's not just ask once, but continue to ask ourselves indefinitely as we progress toward our dreams. What is our teachability index? Why? Quote, "Everyone who comes to me and hears my words and does them, I will show you whom he's like. He's like a man who built in a house, dug, and went down deep, and laid a foundation on the rock. Consequently, when a flood came, the river dashed against that house, but was not strong enough to shake it, for it was well built. On the other hand, whoever hears and does nothing is like a man who built a house on the ground without a foundation. The river dashed against it, and immediately it collapsed, and the ruin of the house was great." End quote. Taken from Luke chapter 6, verse 47 through 48. Quote, "For if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, this one is like a man looking at his own face in a mirror. For he looks at himself and he goes away and immediately forgets what sort of person he is. But the one who peers into the perfect law that belongs to freedom and continues in it has become not a forgetful hearer, but a doer of the word, and he will be happy in what he does." End quote. Taken from James chapter 1, verses 23 through 25. Isn't that interesting that when we compare these texts to people's success discoveries, in essence, they are telling us the same things? James said that as we learn, essentially we are looking at a mirror. Reasoning through the foundation of scientific principles previously discussed, our vibrational frequencies will continue to pick up lessons and illustrations that will mirror our need based on that moment. It also emphasizes that we will be happy when we are doers and not forgetful hearers because we are observing the perfect law of freedom. Quote, "You are taught to put away the old personality that conforms to your former course of conduct and that is being corrupted according to its deceptive desires. And you should continue to be made new in your dominant mental attitude and should put on the new personality." End quote. Taken from Ephesians chapter 4, verses 22 through 24. Quote, "And clothe yourselves with the new personality, which through accurate knowledge it is being made new. Clothe yourselves with the tender affections of compassion, kindness, humility, mildness, and patience." End quote. Taken from Colossians chapter 3, verse 10 and verse 12. In conclusion, really, there is no way around it. We are either progressing or regressing. We either are in a stage of perpetual learning or stuck in a rut because we believe we know it all. If we desire to achieve the success promised under these laws of physics, as stated in the book of Deuteronomy, We must become coachable and bring our teachability index to 100. Hopefully, it is properly and clearly defined in our mind by now with all this information and how it relates to our personal attitude that we must maintain indefinitely and continually a teachable attitude. This will help us to grasp and take root in a firm foundation so that we may become like a tree planted by streams of water so that everything we do may have success. It must be a strong emphasis that we must firmly establish knowledge based on the physical laws of the universe, but we must make it a part of our entire human genome. These are the hidden treasures that we must search for, as we would a literal chest full of gold, for it really is for our ultimate benefit. In essence, it will mean our literal lives. The power of books and audios. Quote, "The book of the law should not depart from your mouth, and you must read it in an undertone day and night in order to observe carefully all that it is written in it. For then your way will be successful, and then you will act wisely." End quote. Taken from Joshua chapter 1, verse 8. Quote, "Everyone must be quick to listen, slow to speak. But the one who peers into the perfect law that belongs to freedom and continues in it has become not a forgetful hearer, but a doer of the work, and he will be happy in what he does." End quote. Taken from James chapter 1, verse 19 and 25. Quote, "He must write for himself in a book a copy of this law." End quote. Taken from Deuteronomy 17, verse 18. These three biblical references highlight the course of action that should be strongly considered when referred to reading books and when listening to audio material. What books and audio material? A list of these materials have been provided in the reference section of this book, which will help establish a focus. As readers, we should read and listen repeatedly so as to master and imprint completely such concepts into our minds. This will include some audio visuals that will powerfully influence our minds so we may absorb much easier these lessons based on laws of the universe. Quote, "That is why it is necessary for us to pay more than the usual attention to the things we have heard so that we never drift away." End quote. Taken from Hebrews chapter 2, verse 1. We must get to the point where we are studying and re-examining books and audio with regularity. As we emphasize such laws and principles, we must observe them carefully so we may become successful in our actions and in every facet of our lives. This is also to strongly imprint the information in our brain, creating a network of neural pathways that enforce these principles and laws of the universe. We should also consider doing what the previous kings of Israel and other rulers did, specifically writing and rewriting concepts, thoughts, words of wisdom, lessons, ideas, notions, texts, and descriptions of what can create success for ourselves. If we decide to create our own kingdom, should we not do exactly as those who were known to have literal kingdoms? It's being suggested that we transcribe word by word books and audios. Certainly it would be tremendous benefit, but we should not be discouraged if we feel we cannot take on such a task. Let's use our powers of discernment and agreement to know what we can or cannot do. But let's strive to do the best we can. Our dreams and goals, and ultimately our lives and the lives of people we love, demand it. Let's now consider and observe what is happening to us and all around us as we take step by step of reading, rereading, writing, and rewriting concepts and the written word in books. According to epigenetics, the quantum energy and environment in which we bathe on when we read books will permeate our entire genome. The collective vibration of such books will influence our entire being. The collective neural pathways that continue to be established and rewritten will affect and influence positively our entire biology. We learned that our hypothalamus will create chemicals that will nourish our entire biological cellular structure based on the nature of those neurons. We will become what we read and write. In essence, in a very literal way, we will become what we think about. Consider what we will be able to vibrate and broadcast 24/7 as we progressively study and review these laws and principles of the universe. As we transform our entire energetic structure, we must continue to become more powerfully aware of how the laws of the universe relate to our lives and the lives of others. By law, we must become wiser, understanding, discerning, learn. We will also influence the entire etheric field of energy, which by law of attraction and magnetic force, it will influence back strongly other people's brain reception in our environment, and ultimately affect their DNA once the populace is influenced by the information to think and act more positively. The populace can and will pick up on those transmissions, helping our entire society integrate progressively these understandings. We must become better for it and because of it, whether individually or collectively. Positive energy must encompass every facet of our lives, internally and externally. Whatever negative energy that exists will be gradually diminished and maybe become non-existent, cancelled, and neutralized, or at least drastically reduced. These benefits will become universal law, as they were described in Deuteronomy chapter 28, verses 1 through 14. Mainly the intention behind them. May we feel doubtful and see all these hopes or prospects as far-fetched, but the laws of physics emphasize what Albert Einstein said. Quote, "We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them." End quote. The laws of physics tells us that it is our thinking that originates and creates the problems we see today. Therefore, it takes extraordinary thinking and creativity to transform our reality into a different and much more positive one. If we continue to think like we have always thought, we will continue to get what we have always gotten. If we want things in our lives to change, we must change things in our lives. It was once outlandish and crazy to think that the earth was round. It was once insane and ridiculous to think that it was the earth that was revolving around the sun. It was once outrageous to think that our universe was in actuality bigger than just the Milky Way. It was once blasphemy to think that the universe is billions of years old and not just a few thousand. It was once ridiculous to think that one day we could fly or go to the moon. Do we dare then to think and realize that the transformation of our world into one of exquisite delight and abundance of peace, where wealth and freedom and infinity as a personal resource is just plain lunacy? Or at least can we consider that we can achieve worldwide peace and prosperity, even though we may never figure out how to achieve life eternal? If we doubt, then, like those who persecuted the people who have transformed our world and made it a better place, we will become obsolete and irrelevant. Why? Because the laws of physics prove that we must become what we think about most of the time. The general population continues to think, speak, and act in manners where they believe that doom and death is the only certain reality. Our imaginations thus have worked in a horrendous way. We have come to learn how to destroy each other and commit suicide more efficiently and creatively. From the use of weapons of mass destruction to the ability to destroy this world many times over, recent times have clearly shown us what we have all been collectively created through our most prevalent thoughts. Governmental sources know this to be the truth and are making plans to eradicate the collective energetic pattern that death is preferable to life. They know that if they allow for such a pattern to continue, then we can only hope for the destruction of the vast majority of the human race. Only those who align their lives to universal policy can hope to survive such cataclysmic event. We are at the threshold of a decision. Will we use our abilities and capabilities, our power of imagination to improve or destroy, faith or fear, life or death? This thought validates strongly what Einstein said about the power of our imagination, for it is more important than knowledge. Quote, Logic will take you from point A to point B. Imagination will take you anywhere. End quote. Albert Einstein. Quote, a new scientific truth does not triumph by convincing its opponents and making them see the light, but rather because its opponents eventually die and a new generation grows up that is familiar with it. End quote. Max Planck. Certainly, it is not being suggested here that life eternal is an established scientific truth, but merely a hypothesis. But even the scientific concept of quantum tunneling and the ramifications of the field of energy that permeates all time and space suggests of its infinite probability. The hypothesis must be tested extensively. We have established background research based on empirical evidence. We have constructed a hypothesis, and now we must experiment individually and collectively. When time comes, we must analyze the data and draw conclusions. But is there scientific data that may suggest of our potentiality, like what Tesla and Jesus said in reference to biological eternity, eternal youth, and beauty? This will be discussed in a later chapter. The power of recognition. Quote, rejoice with those who rejoice, weep with those who weep. End quote. Taken from Romans chapter 12, verse 15. Quote, love is not jealous. It believes all things, hopes all things. End quote. 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 4 and verse 7. In simple terms, we must strongly consider and be self-aware of how we feel about other people's success or failures. Recognition is a form of love and ties in the entire systematic approach of this learning system. Like a step-by-step formula for success, this foundation has to, by law, eventually create and explode our abilities to improve our every facet of life. Being happy with sincerity for others' success without judgment or criticism is extremely important to our personal success. Let's consider the science. A person's success is no more than that person's ability to finally get what they have been thinking about most of the time. A person's desire for that outcome through his faith won the battle against his personal doubts and disbeliefs. Our fears are constantly bombarding us with negative thought. For example, we may hear in our minds thoughts such as the following: I can't do it. It won't work. What is the point? What if I fail? What will other people think or say? I don't have the education. I don't have the expertise. Don't have the experience. I'm too ugly, too short, too incompetent, not smart enough, not intelligent enough. There is too much competition. They will think I am a joke. Other people are better than me. But we can also have positive thoughts such as the following: of course I can do it. This is certainly a possibility. Others have done so. Why wouldn't I be able to do it as well? I must do it. I will do it. I am smart enough, intelligent enough. I have enough education. Who cares about the competition? I am certainly as good. I have confidence. I have patience. I have self-control. I have faith. I am strong. I am resilient. I am hopeful. My dreams are real. I can do whatever I want. I am thankful, grateful, and appreciative. Everything always works out for me. I always land on my feet. I love challenges. I love opportunities. Failure is not an option. Success is the only option. I am positive. I love my life. I love others. I know what I'm doing is right. I know what I have to offer others will benefit them. I will make them eat their words. I will come out on top. People's success is a result of their arsenal or neural pathways that support their dreams. Accomplishing nothing is also a result of their neural pathways, which supports fears. Henry Ford is quoted as saying, "If you think you can or can't, you are right." It is your thinking that makes it so. Do we see other people's success for what it is? A powerful triumph over the forces of evil? People love watching movies or reading books where the forces of good always seem to be suppressed by the forces of evil. But in the end, good always comes out on top. The Star Wars series is a strong example of the excitement and personal gratification it brings us to see such things occur. A strange paradox does occur in real life, though. It seems that the general attitude of the populace is to be critical and judgmental of other people's success. We must do an honest examination of our feelings in connection to other people's success. Do we feel happy for them? Do we feel excited for them? Do we feel love for them? Do we realize we are better for it because it helps us to believe that our goals and dreams can become a reality? Do we realize that it was a fight they endured, but all along, who were we rooting for to win? If we have jealousy, does that mean we subconsciously desire for others to fail? Does it make us feel bad because we believe they are better than we are? Whatever prevalent frequency gets activated will be sent to them, but ultimately it only comes back to us to hunt us down. We must reap what we sow. On the other hand, if we realize that we have appreciation and positive, strong recognition for others' success, then our most prevalent positive thoughts of happiness for them will also be picked up by these people, but also ultimately create and enforce our success. We are happy and genuinely excited for their success. Therefore, others will become genuinely happy and excited for our success. Our success, thus, must be created in our present reality. Another factor is that with results being tangible, we can now examine these examples of success to see how they created what they wanted in their life. We can empirically and objectively observe how they thought, how they spoke, how they acted, how they responded to adversity. We can also examine what habits they developed and what character traits they possess. Acknowledging their success for what it is, empirical evidence, forms of physical manifestations that prove their validity, will help us to replicate their proven hypothesis and experiment successfully. Thus, we must get the same desired results. Proper positive recognition will enforce the complex process to achieve what we want in life and turn them by law into simple, easy to replicate processes in the form of strong neural connections. This process, hardwired into our being, will rewrite our genetic code, simply programming it for success now and the future. Like baby steps, we will struggle from rolling to crawling to easy, natural walking. Our success will become a reality by law, and whatever we set out to do must happen positively without a doubt. Recognition energetically will permeate the duality of particles, and its vibration must continue to spill over into our matrix of reality and permeate all time and space. It will and must make us better as a whole. The mass must gradually change and be modified by the prevalent thoughts of those who acquire and develop a complex neural connection of positive thoughts. These will vibrate 24/7 and will send frequencies back and forth, reinforcing what is being presented to the universe. In this case, a collective vibrational frequency, a prevalent attitude of happiness and expectation of other people's success. A world of love and happy recognition must become the reality. It must become our moral obligation to develop our powers of perception and train ourselves to acknowledge positively other people's quantifiable success. Putting it all together. This is the most effective foundational system that has been put together that is proven to create individual and group success. At least, this is the case so far. Whether we decide to create successful, supporting, loving relationships, Whether we want to build a life of freedom and wealth, whether we want to just feel happy, content, or excited for our lives, this educational system will construct a powerful foundation to create what we desire. But it is up to us to engage and have our teachability index kick in like military training. It is a battle of the mind. We must exercise to win against the negative feedback that we are constantly being projected. Thus be a cause and empower over the influences we create around us. So whether it comes from our own pre-established DNA patterns and thinking, or from our immediate environment, or from the frequencies we pick up from others in the field, we now know that we can do to win. The Bible, ahead of its time, aptly warned us, saying to be aware of the system of things of this world, according to the ruler of the authority of the air, the spirit that is now at work in the sons of disobedience, taken from Ephesians chapter 2, verse 2. We must be self-aware and of our thoughts and emotions, for it is the ether with all the collective patterns of thought that will influence us the most. It will continue to download into our mind the most prevalent thoughts that are in harmony with our mental habits. This is significant for when we fail to comply to the laws of physics and act in harmony with these principles that govern us, our lives must become chaotic. Scientists are able to precisely calculate the travel path of rockets in space because they have been able to clearly define these laws and obey them. The slightest error in calculations have proven disastrous. In a similar manner, we could go off and continue to do our own thing, just act according to what we feel is right, and thus continue to create what we have always created. If we love what we have, then let's continue creating that. The observation and decision is up to us. It is strongly suggested that like a tree purposely planted by a river of clean, abundant water, so we must immerse ourselves and root into all 5 aspects of this system. Reading books, listening to audio material, and watching audio visuals on a regular basis will help us develop strong neural connections. Attending group meetings, whether for learning or just to have loving, fun fellowship with like-minded people, will enhance exponentially our learning experience and how fast we achieve that which we desire. And finally, let's change our minds so as to train our powers of perception to lovingly recognize with genuine interest and excitement the celebration of people's triumph over the forces of evil, as readily as we watch the movies with such stories. Quote, "In brotherly love, have tender affection for one another. In showing honor to one another, take the lead." End quote. Taken from Romans chapter 12, verse 10. Let's celebrate and dedicate positive particle flow by applauding and cheering for those who have acquired success. Then and only then, we will have no choice but to be successful.